summit. Throughout the history of the NATO, one of the most important summits came to an end successfully. So this summit has served for the reaffirmation of the solidarity in the face of ongoing challenges. First and foremost, I would like to thank all the Spanish authorities for the kind hospitality that they have shown towards us, starting with the Spain's King Felipe VI. And I also would like to thank the Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and his team for their efforts for the successful organization of the event. After the war started, we have come together for the third time at the leaders' level, two of which have taken place in Brussels. So the Madrid summit was an important opportunity for assessing the current situation. The support of our alliance to Ukraine is full, but we should also present this support with a peace prospect, and we should show utmost effort for putting an end to bloodshed and the teardrops. We will have to intensify our diplomatic efforts for a sustainable peace. In the first session of the summit, the Ukrainian President, Mr. Zelensky, addressed us via video message. From the outset of the process, I have always had close contact with Mr. Zelensky. As you also know very well, we have always been in a close contact with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. So all those efforts are paving the way for the peaceful solution of the war. Unfortunately, as the war goes on, the destruction increases as well. Starting with the global economy, the negative consequences of the war have been felt by everyone. As the Republic of Turkey, we believe that a just peace will lead to no losers. So we should really intensify and strengthen the hopes which have been initiated thanks to the Istanbul summit. So the role played by the Republic of Turkey as an actor who can speak with all the actors have been appreciated by NATO itself, which we have observed with great joy. From the outset of the war, our priorities have always focused on putting an end to this crisis and to minimize the humanitarian negative consequences of this war, and we have given information to our partners and our allies regarding to our diplomatic efforts. Regarding to the export of the Ukrainian grain from the Black Sea region ports, we have shared our contributions to the plan of the United Nations. We also spoke about our efforts for organizing the four-way meeting to be held in Istanbul with the participation of United Nations. Valuable members of the press, one of the documents that stroked the attention of the media was the adoption of new strategic concept. The strategic concept that has been accepted in 2010 in Lisbon will be substituted by this new strategic concept that we have adopted today. And this document once again reaffirmed and underlined the importance of the values embedded within NATO. And it also presents a vision for adapting NATO to ongoing challenges and ongoing realities. As we are celebrating our 70th year of anniversary of the membership to NATO, the Republic of Turkey has always acted in the spirit of alliance, and without a doubt that Turkey will be one of those actors which would play a key role in this newly adopted strategic key concept. Defining terrorism as one of the key threats to the alliance and reaffirming the determination of NATO in terms of its fight against terrorism is of course very important, but this determinism and this determination and commitment shouldn't stay on paper without showing any discrimination whatsoever between the terrorist organization. The fight against those terrorist organizations should continue unabated. So during the sessions and throughout my bilateral talks with the leaders, I specifically underlined the importance of this fight against the terrorist organizations, and I also pinpointed that this is not a security concern only for Turkey, but NATO itself. So this murder gangs, which are trying to maximize their political gains by murdering civilians are our common enemies. So there is no guarantee that those weapons which are used against Turkey wouldn't be used against our allies. The historical experience showed us again and again that those weapons later on have been targeted to allies. In the recent days, it is crystal clear that this insolent approach towards the PKK terrorist organization is the greatest example. So we should get rid of this problem which grows like a cancerous cell. So we are expecting from our allies to take into consideration our security concerns, not only in rhetoric, but in their actions as well. And I have also had the chance to watch a video regarding to Turkey's fight against the terrorist organization together with all the leaders. So we once again have shown this face of PKK, YPG, PYD, and Fethullah terrorist organization to all our interlocutors and addressees. Once again, we have seen this reality again and again. If we want to preserve the credibility and trustworthiness of NATO as the allies, we should have a more consistent and clearer stance regarding to our fight against terrorist organizations, and we should take more concrete and sincere steps. Preventing the recruitment of terrorists to those terrorist organizations is an indispensable part of this fight. Approximately, we have been fighting with the terrorist organizations for 40 years, and we have lost many of our sons and daughters to terror. So we have, as a result, no tolerance for stalling. What happened within the context of the membership of Sweden and Finland to NATO once again has shown the red lines for Turkey. From the first day onwards, we have always expressed our sensitivities, and we have presented a constructive but a consistent approach. Within the facilitation of the General Secretary on Tuesday, we have convened our four-way talks together with NATO, Finland, and Sweden. So it is a great indication that the undersigning of the trilateral memorandum is the effect that the security concerns of Turkey has been understood. Of course, this is just a start. This is an invitation, but what matters is that those words given to us should be kept. So we will meticulously follow whether those words are kept or not, and we will take our steps according to the fact that whether those words are kept or not. Valuable members of the press, we cannot look to the diplomacy as a zero-sum game. Quite the contrary, diplomacy is the shortcut and the safest way in order to make sure that the both parties can reach out to their targets. That's why we believe that it will be much more appropriate to interpret trilateral memorandum undersigned between Turkey, Finland and Sweden with such kind of an understanding. Of course, this trilateral memorandum is a diplomatic victory that we have obtained after a challenging negotiation process. With this trilateral memorandum, the Republic of Turkey is expecting full cooperation in the fight against terrorist organizations, including but not limited to PKK, YPG, and PYD. PYD, YPG, and Fethullah terrorist organization will not be supported by those countries as per their promises, and at the same time, in the field of defense industry, no restrictions will be imposed on Turkey, and the cooperation in those fields will be improved and strengthened. And the national legislation of the aforesaid countries, Finland and Sweden, will renew their legislations, and the concrete steps in the fight against the terrorist organizations would be taken. And Sweden has given us this promise: 73 terrorists will be extradited and deported to Turkey. And the activities of PKK and their extensions with regards to the recruitment of the terrorists will be prevented, and all those activities will be legally investigated by those countries. So Turkey has obtained concrete promises by those countries with the participation of the intelligence services and also the security forces. A permanent joint mechanism between those countries will be established, including but not limited to PESCO. Finland and Sweden would support the integration of Turkey to all European security organizations. So all the security concerns articulated by Turkey has been covered within the trilateral memorandum. At the end of the day, together with Turkey and NATO, the winner of this trilateral memorandum is the nations of Finland and Sweden. Every positive steps taken in the fight against the terrorist organizations would remarkably contribute to the peace, safety and security of those countries. Valuable members of the press, within the margin of the summit, I had the chance to come together with many leaders and heads of state and governments. So within this context, I had the chance to come together with the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, Niniso, and Prime Minister of Sweden, Magdalena Andersson. We have come together with them in order to convene our four-way talks. In addition to this summit, I have come together with French President Macron, the Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson, Charles Michel, and the President of the USA, Joe Biden. And I have come together with the Austrian Chancellor, Nehammer, Pedro Sanchez, Prime Minister of Spain, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, and Netherlands Prime Minister Rutte and Ioannis, and the South Korean President Yoon were among the people with whom we had talks. Throughout the bilateral talks, I had a chance to speak with many presidents, including but not limited to Hungary. So we have assessed the latest developments unfolding in Ukraine, and we have exchanged our views with my interlocutors. And we also assessed the topics in our agenda with their different aspects. The Republic of Turkey, which has been the member of NATO for the last 70 years, having the second greatest army in NATO and contributing to the NATO operations and becoming one of the top five contributors, we once again have seen that Turkey will have a louder voice for the future of NATO. As we follow an independent and sovereign foreign policy within the spirit of alliance, we will continue to contribute to the NATO, and we would like to see a same level of sincere contribution by our allies. So we hope that the Madrid summit will open the doors for a brand new era. So with these thoughts in my mind, I wish that this summit will be proven beneficial and auspicious. Once again, I greet you all with respect.
Tell us how that plan is going to work, how close you are to a deal, and when you plan next to speak to President
Putin? Both with Mr. Putin and with Mr. Zelensky, either at the end of this week or at the outset of next week, we will do our best to continue speaking with them through a phone diplomacy. We already have a roadmap. By speaking with Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky, we will do our best to make sure that this grain corridor would be functional. We have approximately 20 ships in the region, and together with those ships, we will do our best to export the grain out of this region, and by making use of the re-export function, we will do our best to export those grain to third countries. Hümeyre Pamuk from Reuters. His Excellency Mr. President, Joe Biden in his presser stated that he has spoken with you and he supports the selling of F-16, and he stated that the confirmation will come from Congress. So has he given you any promise that he would work on this topic on the Congress? Because in the recent time there is an anti-Turkish feeling in the Congress. Has he given you any certain date regarding to the selling of F-16 fighter jets? Do not rush, Hümeyre. Let me answer this question first. I will answer your question immediately. As you know, the parliaments are the places where the challenges are faced with. Of course, Mr. President Joe Biden stated that he would take the necessary steps. As you know, there are not only Democrats in the Congress, but there are also the Republicans. And a broad delegation of Turkey last week was in USA, and they had talks both with Democrats and Republicans. And after our bilateral talk with Mr. Biden last night, we have stated that we would send our delegation if need be, and we would speak with the Republicans, and if we receive the support of the Republicans, I believe that sincere efforts by Mr. Biden regarding to this issue would be strong support. So without further ado, we would be sending another delegation to USA. So my second question would be about the trilateral memorandum that we have undersigned with Finland and Sweden. So I would like to ask that Turkey expects certain steps to be taken by Sweden and Finland. And if we see that those steps are not taken by Sweden and Finland, the Republic of Turkey, can we expect Turkey to use its veto power? So there is no need to veto it again. I mean, if the membership of Finland and Sweden is not ratified by our parliament, they couldn't become members to NATO. First of all, the Finland and Sweden should do their shares. As long as Finland and Sweden are undertaking those duties and responsibilities, then we would be sending this membership of Finland and Sweden for ratification to our parliament. Otherwise, this wouldn't be the case. So, Macedonia became a NATO member within 20 years. So, the membership process to NATO is not a short one. So, Finland knows it and Sweden knows it. So, they should take the necessary steps first and foremost. PKK, YPG, PYD, Fethullah terrorist organization. First of all, those terrorist organizations should be cleansed from those countries, and they should make the necessary legal amendments in that regard. Rüya Akkuş, with your permission, I would like to ask another question regarding to Finland and Sweden membership. This was a reaction to Russia, and Russia interprets it as an aggressive policy of NATO. And Joe Biden used very harsh words against Russia, and he stated that we are strengthening NATO in Europe against Russia. So if we take all those statements into consideration, we know that the Republic of Turkey has good relations with Russia, but considering the fact that Turkey is a NATO member, do you think that the relations between Turkey and Russia would be affected? So, as you say harsh words, Joe Biden used harsh words against Russia. That's what I mean. Well, dear colleagues, we have good relations with Russia. We have good bilateral relations with Russia, but on the other hand, we have good bilateral relations with Ukraine as well. So we would like to make politics based on a balanced approach. We wouldn't like to follow a policy based on conflicts, both in terms of defense industry and also in energy sector. More than 40% of our natural gas comes from Russia. And as you know, we are constructing our nuclear power plant together with Russia in Akkuyu. So these are important projects for Turkey. We cannot put all those projects aside. That's why we will follow the process. So during this process, hopefully, the foreign policy will be carried out on a win-win situation.
You are one of the very few NATO leaders who seems to have even brought up the prospect of pursuing a diplomatic solution for the war in Ukraine. Other leaders like Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, they're emphasizing almost exclusively the military component. Biden just this afternoon announced new missile systems being deployed to Ukraine by the U.S. What accounts for this difference in philosophy, and do you think the path being chosen by the U.S. and the UK is overly aggressive and is going to prolong the war?
Well, let me see whether you will understand what I'm trying to say. As you know, every person has a way of eating the yogurts. I wonder whether such kind of an expression is present in English.
Proof is in the pudding, I think, would be the English expression, but close enough.
Well, Boris is a friend that I like him very much. So he has a different approach and I have a different approach. But a balanced approach when it comes to diplomacy, I guess, would be much more beneficial. So we should take our steps with a win-win policy. If we take our steps with a win-win policy, then I guess that the decisions that we take will be much more beneficial and much more auspicious. That's why I am speaking with Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky on a frequent basis, either once in a week or once in 10 days. We speak with them over the phone, and I hope that we will obtain results out of those talks. Ela Sezen from Haber Global. His Excellency Mr. President, the alliance member Greece is arming the islands, as you know. I wonder whether this topic has been brought to the agenda. And during your bilateral talks with Mr. Biden, did you mention the opening of the US bases in Greece? As you know, the approach of Greece in the recent time doesn't have a place in our understanding of politics. After our dinner in Istanbul, I have made him a proposal, and we stated that let's deal our relations with only each other. Let's not involve others in our bilateral relations. But on the other hand, with the speech that he has delivered in the US Senate, unfortunately, after 2 or 3 weeks, he really broke this verbal agreement between us. And he also did the same thing in Davos. And then he went even one step further. So he paid special visits to those small islands, and he unfortunately strived for arming those islands. Those islands, according to the Lausanne Treaty and Paris Treaty, cannot be armed. But Greece is arming those islands, and as you stated yourself, the United States of America is opening bases, and when we ask them why are you opening those bases, they say that we are opening those bases against Russia. But my nation cannot be deceived with such explanations. Why? I mean, those questions will be asked. Why are you constructing those bases? Because if we want to establish a world where the peace would prevail, then I wonder why those steps are taken. So we are not welcoming those steps, of course, and we have stated and expressed it clearly to the leaders during our bilateral talks. Sultan Akdoğan from ATV. So I would like to ask a domestic question. Before the summit, the opposition parties were criticizing you, stating that why do we stand against Finland and Sweden? And as you mentioned yourself, Turkey has received concrete and tangible guarantees by aforesaid countries, and still the opposition parties criticized you that Turkey has taken a step back. That was the criticism. Well, the opposition party, I mean, if there is something as crystal clear like black and white, they wouldn't articulate the truth, unfortunately. This is how the Turkish opposition is. Well, all the documents are shared, all the agreements are shared, and everyone sees what world thinks about this memorandum, this agreement. And our approach and the steps taken by us intrigues attention of other leaders, and the steps taken by Turkey have been appreciated by all leaders, and together with all the proofs and documents, we have presented our fight against terrorist organization with USB sticks, and we have also shared with them with the video records. So after they watch those video records, they will understand our fight against the terrorist organizations much more better. So the terrorist organization supporters in Sweden are very anxious at the moment, but of course the opposition parties are not satisfied with the latest developments, and we will express them the situation as we go back. His Excellency, Mr. President, you have stated at the outset of your speech that 73 terrorists will be deported back to Turkey. Could you please elaborate on that? Because in the past, Sweden rejected those extraditions. Well, in the past, regarding to the extradition of 60 terrorists, they were negotiating with us. So right now they have increased this number to 73. So we will see whether they will keep their words. We will be following whether they would keep their promises. Betül Usta from Sabah newspaper. His Excellency Mr. President, in your previous bilateral talk face-to-face with Mr. Biden in Rome, you have decided that a strategic cooperation mechanism would be established, so the diplomatic correspondences go on. So Mr. Çavuşoğlu, with his interlocutor Blinken, is expected to come together. So, as you know, the intelligence documents and the military documents are assessed in great depth. But on the other hand, the United States of America is imposing sanctions against Turkey within the framework of CAATSA. Did you also discuss whether Turkey would be uplifted, would be taken out of CAATSA sanctions? Well, we didn't mention this topic, but there are positive developments regarding to the Turkey being taken out of CAATSA sanctions.
Finland. Are you saying, or let's say threatening, that Turkey will stop the ratification process if Finland won't send back people you have named as a terrorist, or change its legislation? For example, our government have already said that we are not able to change our legislation or send back those people you are asking from us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ben tabii bana verilen söze bakıyorum.
Well, of course, I will take into consideration whether those words are kept or not. If the promises are not kept, then
Bunun gereğini yerine getiririz.
we will do
Siz şimdi
whatever is written on the agreement. So, I mean, if you give us promises stating that those terrorists will be extradited, and if you promise that you will amend the legislation, but if you are not doing your share,
yerine getir.
then unfortunately, so the principal politics and principal foreign policy can be carried out as long as the words are kept. If the words are not kept,
Sözü neyse o sözü tutar.
then unfortunately you can't expect a positive stance by Turkey. So Finland says the same thing, and Sweden said the same thing, and they said that we would keep our promises. And if they keep their promises, then Erdoğan would keep their promises. But if Erdoğan doesn't keep his promises, then you can keep Erdoğan accountable.
Thank you, Mr. President, for taking my question. The NATO Charter sets out a commitment to safeguard the freedom of the peoples, founded on the principles of democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law. Turkey was once the world's worst jailer of journalists. It is consistently ranked among the countries with the least press freedom and freedom of opinion in the world. More than 1,000 human rights lawyers have been arrested following the coup. You have suppressed opposition to your rule. Turkey, under your leadership, does it really fit in NATO?
Bunu diyen kim?
Who says this?
Are you asking where I'm from?
Well, first of all, the Freedom House should question itself
Bunlar öncelikle
because
Türkiye'de 40 yılda
within
1000 vatandaşımız
40 years, 40,000 of our citizens have been murdered in Turkey. The mothers of Diyarbakir for 1,100 days
evlatlarını bekliyor.
are waiting for their sons in front of the doors of
12
HDP.
yaşında, 13 yaşında, 14
The sons and daughters of those mothers have been kidnapped at the age of 12 and 13. Where is Freedom House? So the Freedom House should first of all visit the mothers of Diyarbakir. Why are they waiting? They are waiting the sons and their daughters who had been kidnapped.
Bu HDP'liler,
So those
PKK'lılar,
HDP
bu YPG
members, PKK members, YPG members, so do you kidnap those kids for the sake of
özgürlüğün tanımını
freedom?
iyi bilecek.
So first of all, we should define a freedom right.
Benim özgürlük alanımın sizin
So
özgürlük
my
alanınız
freedom is only
özgürlük
to the
alanı
area of your freedom. So your freedom also ends when my freedom starts. So if we can define freedom as such, then we can obtain results. But unfortunately in Turkey, there is the reality of
14-15
Kandil
yaşında
terrorists.
çocuklar
The daughters at the age of 13, 14, and 15 are kidnapped and taken to the mountains, and they are receiving trainings with the weapons at the size of their height. Do you know about this? I wonder whether the Freedom House can follow those developments. None at all.
That is whataboutery with respect, Mr. President. What about the journalists you've jailed? What about the civil rights activists you've jailed? The human rights lawyers that you have jailed?
benim şu anda ülkemde
So right now,
cezai
in my country,
olmadıktan sonra hukuk
as long as
herhangi bir cezai
there is
muhatap olmadıktan sonra
no place for
gazeteci,
legal sanctions,
kör, fikir,
it doesn't matter. I mean,
cezaevlerinde olan
the journalists
hepsi bunların sadece
or thinking members are not taken into prisons. These are nothing but disinformation and slander campaign.
Jan Andersson, Swedish Radio. Mr. President, I have a question according these guarantees that you have received from the Prime Minister of Sweden and even the President of Finland, according to the 33, as you put it, terrorists as a kind of an extradition to Turkey. And what's the
73.
difference
73.
between 33 and
73,
73? Yes, please. Thank you.
73,
Not 33, 73.
73.
Can you please
Ya
explain,
bunların
sir?
bize verecekler.
Well, they will extradite those terrorists because this is the promise given to us, and those promises have been registered in the memorandum, so they would keep their promises and their words.
Okay?
Rama Sofia Rajji, United States Press Agency. I'd like to ask you a question about diplomacy. It is a one-of-a-kind situation because you have lifted the veto to Finland and Sweden 2 days ago, and we're living a momentum and historic moment if the membership is validated. And at the same time, you're one of the rare leaders keeping both conversation and communication with President Zelensky and President Putin. And you have also been implementing effective unlocking humanitarian corridors during this war. So how can we call this new fashion of diplomacy that you're implementing? Because this is very, very new for me. And what are the next steps? Because you said that you're gonna focus on getting a ceasefire. Thank you. Teşekkür ederim.
Her şeyden önce ben bir siyasetçi,
Before all, I'm a politician.
40 yıllık bir siyasi geçmişim.
I have a political career of 40 years.
Başbakan
I served as mayor, prime minister,
yaşadım
and president.
ve siyasette parti teşkilatlarının en
And
altından tırmanarak
from the bottom of the political party organization, I have come all the way to the presidency, and I have learned one thing. The politics is not about arguing and conflicting with each other. If the politics is indexed to serve peace, then you should obtain friends. If you win enemies, then you will lose in politics. So my history with Mr. Putin dates back. My friendship with Mr. Zelensky is slightly newer because he is still new in the Ukrainian politics. But after he came to office, our relations with Mr. Zelensky was quite intense. But our relations with Mr. Putin is much older. So there is indeed a reality. I mean, if we are to be the facilitator, then we should take some important steps. And what were those important steps? We gathered the Ukrainian representatives together with the Russian representatives in Istanbul, and we made sure that they came together. And by doing this, we have initiated a new process. And I hope that in the upcoming period, we will intensify those diplomatic correspondences and we will speed up this process. And indeed, in such a world where there is a grain crisis, if we can take that grain out of Russia and Ukraine, I believe that the countries who are in need of grain, wheat, and some flour would be relieved even further.
My question is about Syrian operation in Syria and northern Syria. So Sweden and Finland confirmed about the Turkey's concern about the terrorism. So do you think that that new coming operation will be understood by international society? Thank you.
Uluslararası camianın anlamayacağı bir operasyonu yapmayız.
We will not carry out an operation that cannot be understood by the international community.
Onların anlayacağı operasyonları
So we are carrying out cross-border operation which would be understood by the international community, and the Republic of Turkey has a good level of experience when it comes to cross-border operations.
Natalia from the Catalan News Agency. I wanted to ask you about the meeting today with the Spanish President Pedro Sanchez. I wanted to know your assessment on the relations with Spain, and also if you have any updates on the delivery of Spanish weapons. Thank you.
İspanya bizim her şeyden önce çok samimi
First and foremost, and before everything else, Spain is a very sincere friend of Turkey. In the most critical times,
Patriotları
as you know,
yerleştirdi.
they have
Buradaki ortaklar
planted the Patriots
götürdüler materyalarını.
in Turkey, and other allies in NATO
Hala onların
have taken the batteries of the Patriots, but Spain didn't take the batteries of the Patriots out of Turkey. That's why, on behalf of my state and my nation, I specifically would like to thank Pedro Sanchez. I am indebted to him in that regard. And we have taken one step together with Spain. And as you know, together with Spain, we have
dolu uçak gemimiz
produced airplane carrier, and
ve öyle zannediyorum
Anadolu airplane carrier is already at the sea, and I am certain that it will start
helikopterlerin inip kalktığı bir
moving in the international seas. So this airplane carriers will be a landing platform for the drones, for the unmanned aerial vehicles.
doları aştı.
So at the moment,
Hacmine
we have a bilateral trade volume with Spain by $15 billion, and we would like to increase that number to the level of $20 billion.
önemli rol
Of course, the statesmanship of Pedro Sanchez in that regard plays a very important role, and by taking the opportunity here, I also would like to thank my dear friend Pedro Sanchez and also His Excellency King Felipe on behalf of myself and my nation.
President Keir Simmons from NBC News. In the past, Joe Biden has said some things about you that left you very angry. This week, you appear to be best friends with President Biden. What changed? And can I press you also on whether you were given any guarantees by members of Congress that Turkey would receive military supplies, for example, F-16s?
Siyasette böyle bir şey olur mu?
So, do you think that such a thing can happen in politics?
Dündür, bugün.
Well, yesterday is yesterday, and today is today when it comes to politics. That's why many things can change in politics within 24 hours. So with this understanding, we should look at politics. But we should stand firm and still. Of course, the history of United States and Turkey relations are dating back a long in time. Before I became Prime Minister, I initiated a process with Bush, and of course we had our bad days and good days. Either way, the relations between Turkey and United States went on.
Sorry, the second part of my question, just did you get any guarantees from members of Congress that they would pass agreements to send weapons to Turkey, F-16s, for example?
Şu anda işte burada bir
Well,
ilişki var. Şu
there is a dilemma here.
Cumhuriyetçiler
Democrats versus Republicans.
desteği almak gerekiyor.
So we should be able to obtain support from both sides. But
Sayın Biden kendinden emin.
Biden, despite all these,
Bunun açıklamasını
is confident with himself, and he expressed it in the press meeting as well. And I hope that we will obtain the positive results which our friendship deserves.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Nick Schifrin from PBS NewsHour. If I could go back to the question of extradition, the agreement that you signed with Finland and Sweden says that Finland and Sweden will address the extradition requests. It does not say that Finland and Sweden will confirm Turkey's extradition request. So are you asking Finland and Sweden to go beyond the language that you've agreed?
Şimdi metni okudunuz
Well, you have read the memorandum.
veya verecektir, vermeyecektir. Tabii bizim ne anladığımız önemli.
Well, here what matters is what we understand
Ne anladığımız önemli. Ve
from
bununla
the
ilgili olarak da
talks.
İsveç bu 73 kişiyi
And
güncelleyerek
Sweden,
vereceğinin sözünü bu metinle verdi.
with this agreement and memorandum, has given its word and promise that those 73 terrorists would be extradited to us. We will see whether they would give or not, but we will take our decisions according to their action.
To respect Turkish judicial system. You cited that earlier to a question. If the Finnish and Swedish judicial systems themselves do not allow the extradition, will you respect those judicial decisions?
Biz bunların özellikle terörizme bu yargı sistemleri
Well,
çanak tutuyorsa
if the judicial system of those aforesaid countries are enabling terrorism, then first they should explain it, and if that is not the case, they should still owe us an explanation.
yargı sistemimiz
In our country, our judicial system
çanak tutmaz.
never allows terrorism,
Teröristlere yönelik
and
konuda yasalarımız,
our laws and our legislation is quite harsh against terrorist organizations and terrorists, and they will do
Finlandiya ve İsveç
whatever is necessary. And I hope that
bizim yasalarımız bu konuda serttir.
they stated that our laws are strict and harsh, and we will do whatever is necessary. So we are expecting to see it.
Arkadaşlar,
Well, dear friends,
gayet müzakere olmayacak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Defi Kutsokosta from Euronews. I would like to make a question about Greece because we saw yesterday after your meeting with the American President Joe Biden that the need for the stability in the Aegean has been discussed. So what exactly has been discussed? And this means that we should expect a de-escalation of tensions in the region or even a meeting or a new approach with the Greek Prime Minister? Thank you.
Yani Yunanistan germedikten sonra biz germeye
well, if the Greece is not
ama
creating tensions,
147 kez
we
hava
wouldn't
sahası ihlal eden Yunanistan
tense the relations, but the Greece, who violated our airspace 147 times,
hava sahamızı ihlal
have to answer for it. So if you are violating the airspace of Turkey 147 times, and when the air forces of Turkey responds, then you shouldn't be bothered at all. First of all, Greece should come to her senses, and arming those islands is the violation of Lausanne Treaty and Paris Treaty. And they should read Lausanne Treaty and Paris Treaty, and they should take their steps accordingly.
Señor presidente, una pregunta muy breve. Se ha hablado mucho en esta cumbre de lucha antiterrorista y quería saber si hay algún plan de la OTAN o de Turquía.
Sen de İspanyolcayı bilmiyorsun tabii.
¿Continúo?
İngilizce
Quería, yeah. You have talked many times about terrorism and the threat it's supposed to mean to NATO and its allies. And I would like to know if Turkey and NATO has plans to combat that terrorism in Afghanistan.
Afganistan'daki terörle mücadele noktasında
Regarding to our fight against terrorism in Afghanistan, as you know,
yani 1000'e yakın askerimiz vardı.
we had approximately 1,000 soldiers in Afghanistan, and together with NATO and the United States of America as the coalition powers, we struggled a lot in the region. And
Aynı Afganistan'daki yeni
likewise,
katkıda bulunma
we
arzusuyla
really have the will to contribute to this new process in Afghanistan. Regarding to the operation of the Kabul airport, we stated that we would like to take this responsibility together with Qatar and United Arab Emirates. So we are willing to undertake the operation of Kabul airport together with the aforesaid countries, and we can also contribute to infrastructure.
tarafının yaklaşımını bekliyoruz.
So we are expecting a response from the Afghanistan, and we hope that if a positive response comes from Afghanistan, we will take our steps further.
President Consoli from Asca News Italy. I would like to ask one question concerning the definition of terrorism, because this is the very point of all this discussion with Finland and Sweden. Turkey had a problem with the European Union about the Turkish definition of terrorism in the Turkish judiciary system, which is not accepted by the EU. And that's the reason why the problem of the free passports for the EU was never solved. Now you are saying that Sweden and Finland will have to extradite terrorists that you consider terrorists, but they could be not considered terrorists under the EU definition and Finnish and Swedish definition. PKK is a terrorist organization under the EU list.
but the EU list does not consider terrorists the FETO organization and the YPG or PYD. So they cannot extradite people that belong to this organization just because they belong to this organization. If there are proven crimes, violent crimes, terrorist crimes, yes, but they have to be proven for those single people, single persons. So is there a problem for you if you, Turkey, and your veto that you have removed now, if these countries decide that people that you accuse of terrorism are not terrorists under their law, under the EU definition, they are not in the list, the EU list, because they're not PKK, but they belong to this other organization. There is a problem. Is this something that would push you to put the veto again? Thanks.
Terörist noktasında biz belgeleriyle
When it comes to terrorists, together with the proofs,
ötesinde düşünün ki
we have
insanı
shown it. They are not opting for violence, but they have murdered many people. I mean, if they murdered so much people, and if it is still said that those people have nothing to do with the terrorism, then we cannot trust the laws of such countries. We will send them the proofs
bu belgelerle birlikte
by our intelligence services, and based on those proofs and documents, we will expect those terrorists to be extradited to Turkey. Our judiciary and our intelligence service wouldn't ask for the extradition of those people without such proofs and documents. It is crystal clear. So if you allow me, we should also go back to our country. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your
sağ olun.
interest. Thank you very much.
Türkiye eğitimimiz soldan çıkış yapabilirler. Türkiye eğitimiz arabalarına sol taraftan geçebilir.